And in the case of TikTok, which 170 million Americans use and on average use about 90 minutes a day, TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, Chinese company, Chinese law requires as of 2017 that all data, all information, that frankly the company itself, its first responsibility is loyalty to the Communist Party of China, not loyalty to its shareholders, not loyalty to its customers. And, over a year ago, I was involved in trying to put together a bipartisan approach that would not just focus on TikTok per se, but focus on technology companies from China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran that pose national security risks. We were making great progress, but then TikTok dropped $100 million in advertising and lobbying. We got attacked from both the left and the right, and that effort stalled out. That's why I was so happy to see the House in an overwhelming number, 352 votes, vote in favor of a process that would not ban TikTok, but would say it and other social media companies controlled by China, but particularly TikTok, would have to be divested, or you could end up in terms of removing the application. Let me say at the outset, there's a lot of creativity on TikTok. And there's a lot of people who are social influencers or make their money off of that. I think that's all great. And I think that creativity and that platform should be able to continue. It should just not be ultimately controlled by an adversary like the Chinese Communist Party. Again, as I said, 170 million Americans, 90 minutes a day. The amount of data that they are collecting that resides back ultimately in Beijing is overwhelming. And the ability and the magic of TikTok is that it kind of knows what you like before you know what you like. The ability for that algorithm that spits out what video you see next could be used as a tremendous propaganda tool for the CCP. We're in an election year in America. You could end up seeing messages that might say, well, Taiwan is actually part of China, or Putin has a right to Ukraine. And when particularly young people in huge numbers look to get all their news from TikTok, that is an enormous national security threat. So this overwhelming bipartisan vote in the House is, I think, good news. Senator Rubio and I, my ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, we've said we want to support that legislation and get a hearing in the Senate. There may need to be certain changes made, but I think having this debate on the floor of the Senate, making sure people realize what's at stake, that we're not trying to eliminate something that a lot of people like, but we're just trying to make sure that ultimately that control is not held by the Communist Party of China. And we've already seen indications, actually, that former Trump Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, who I worked well with, who was very active in the efforts to, under President Trump, to try to take down TikTok. He is putting together an investor group that would try to purchase this. So whether it was his group or some other group or some combination of American efforts, European efforts, I just think we need a solution. And I point out this is not just a problem that has been voiced in America. Other nations, Canada, Great Britain, the European Union, Australia, New Zealand, have all taken TikTok off all of their government phones because of the national security risk. Journalism companies like the British Broadcasting Corporation have said, to journalists, don't use TikTok because the Chinese can use this to monitor you as a journalist and frankly, collect damaging information. So I think it's time for us to have a debate. I know that Congress's track record on putting any ground rules or any barriers on social media or artificial intelligence has been pretty poor. But I do think the overwhelming vote in the House, the national security implications mean that we should, I hope the Senate will take up this legislation, amend it if necessary, but get it to the president's desk as soon as possible. And the president has indicated he will sign that. And again, I'd say to TikTok users, we don't want to take away the experience. We want you to still have access to the creativity. If you make your living as a social influencer, we want that to continue. We just don't want it at the end of the day, this incredibly powerful tool for news and information, or a powerful tool that collects a host of personal data to be controlled by the Communist Party of China. And Chinese law requires that they can make that request at any time. And I think TikTok's heavy-handed tactics of soliciting user information and then almost forcing TikTok users to call their congressman was so heavy-handed, and it showed how that platform could be abused. Think if they made that same decision a week before the election and sent out information that said, well, the date for the election has been changed, or we're going to change or put forward views on a particularly politically hot topic. I mean, we would remember, China does not allow Facebook or Google or other American social media companies to operate in China. We would never say it's okay for an adversarial nation to buy Fox News or MSNBC, but that's the equivalent of what we have right now. We have a platform that 170 million Americans use, and TikTok's information is about 90 minutes a day. That's a lot more time than folks spend on any individual cable channel on average. Controlled by an adversary, there's got to be a change here. And whether it's Mr. Mnuchin or whether it's some other group or some combination, I think the TikTok experience will continue. It just ought to be, at the end of the day, in the hands of owners that actually have the shareholders and the customers' interest held first. And that's part of the case that we need to make now in the Senate. And I think, again, I knew a lot of House members after they got the classified briefing about the security risks. I think that was one of the reasons they achieved 352 votes. I think we need to make those same kind of briefings available for senators.